All right, so for today, I wanted to go ahead and go over how to factor using the sum of cubes and the difference of cubes. Before we talk about how to factor using the sum and difference of cubes, I just want to remind you all one more time, as always, please don't forget you do have the Delta Math assignments to work on. Please don't forget you do have a Delta Math that I had graded this week called Polynomials and Operations / Factoring. The due date is listed there. Please make sure that you're actively working on this assignment. Another thing is we will have a quiz next class. I did go ahead and create a practice quiz on Delta Math, covering the topics that I want on the quiz. The topics will be factoring out using the GCF, factoring using the difference of squares, and factoring using the sum and difference of cubes, which is what I will be going over in this video. Another thing is you will be having an exam. In preparation for the exam, I did create 2 extra credit assignments. Like always, I created a Delta Math assignment, which is already posted here. Please feel free to work on it. I also posted an extra credit opportunity on Eduphoria. That's already posted, and the solutions to the Eduphoria exam review are also on Canvas. So please make sure you check on Canvas. The solutions are already posted for you to look at, which is right here. I'm planning for y'all to take the exam for B-Day on Monday, February 24th. So please keep that in mind. The exam will be scheduled for Monday, February 24th. As a reminder, next Friday you don't have any school. So those are the most important reminders. But let's go ahead and talk about factoring using the sum and difference of cubes. So here, I want to kind of just relate it back to factoring using the greatest common factor. This is what we talked about last class. And we also specifically focus on factoring using the difference of squares. When we talked about factoring using the difference of squares, please remember we took the square root of each term, and that allowed us to factor the polynomial I gave you. The same situation will occur in factoring using the sum of cubes. Notice here we have 2 terms, and this time we have an addition sign in between. So here, I just want you to write down this formula. I don't expect for you to memorize it, but I do expect for you to know how to apply it. So in order to factor this out, this is the equivalent of saying parentheses a plus b, close the parentheses, multiply by whatever the a is. We're gonna square it. Notice here we kept the same sign. The next step is to take the opposite sign, so minus. We're gonna multiply a and b together, so ab, and the last term in this is gonna always be positive, so plus whatever b is, and we're gonna square that, and we'll close the parentheses. So we're going to be using this formula to help us factor some of these examples here. If you look at the first example I gave you here on the top left, they want you to factor x cubed plus 27. And here is the most important part. We got to be able to rewrite this as something cubed plus something cubed. And just like we were factoring using the difference of squares, in order to factor a situation like this, instead of square rooting it, we're going to go ahead and cube root each term. So for the first one, we're going to take the cube root of x to the third. Here, the 3's will cancel out, so we're just left with x. That is what I'm going to go ahead and put in the parentheses on the first one. Next one here, we're going to take the cube root of 27. If you take the cube root of 27, that'll be equal to 3. On a calculator, if you want to hit math, the math button, and then hit 4, that should lead you to the cube root icon. So the cube root of 27 is 3. I'm going to make sure I put 3 into the other part. So this right here is really the most important part. After you do this, we got to identify what A and B are. A and B are located within the parentheses. So here, we'll keep it in alphabetical order. So A comes first, so we'll call this one A, and the 3 is going to be our B. And then now we can apply the formula. So the way we factor this is equal to parentheses. They want us to add A and B together. So we'll have X plus 3. And then we'll introduce the other parentheses. They want us to square our A. So we want to square the X, which leaves us with X squared. The sign switch. And the in between, they want A, B. So A multiplied by B. X times 3. We can write that as 3x. So we have minus 3x. And then wind it off with b squared. So positive. And we want 3 squared, which is 9. So wind it off with positive 9 and close the parentheses. So this is how you would factor x cubed plus 27. This would be the final answer. All right, let's look at 2 more examples on the bottom left. This is also a very important problem. Once again, you have 2 terms, a positive sign in between. It's cubic, so we gotta be able to write this as something cubed plus something cubed. And once again, we're gonna take the cube root of each piece. So the cube root of 64, if we enter that in the calculator, will give us 4. I'm gonna put in 4 here. We're going to take the cube root of x cubed. That just leaves us with x again. So we have 4x within the parentheses. The same goes for the 27. We're going to take the cube root of 27. If you take the cube root of 27, that'll give us 3. And that's what I'm going to go ahead and put in the other parentheses. Once you go ahead and rewrite it, don't forget we got to identify A and B, which are located within the parentheses. So this is A, this one's B. Now, knowing A and B, we can apply the same formula. So here, once again, they want us to add A and B. So A is 4x, 3 is B. We'll add them together, so we'll get 4x plus 3. Introduce the parentheses. And here is really the most important part. You definitely want to be real careful with this. They want us to square the A value. Notice here, though, the A is 4x. So we got to make sure we square the whole thing of 4x. So I want to make sure you put that in parentheses and square the whole thing. We'll do that in just a minute. But then we have minus a times b. Here, a times b, 4x times 3 is the same thing as 12x. So we'll have minus 12x. And last piece here will always be positive. And they want us to square the b value. So we want to square 3. 3 squared is once again 9, so we'll end it off with plus 9. All right, so here we get to just simplify it just a little more. If you look at this piece, this is really the most important piece. We gotta be able to distribute the exponent into each piece. So here we'll get 4 squared. 4 squared is 16, x squared minus 12x plus 9. All right, so for the last example, we're going to go ahead and go over to the back. Here, once again, this is the next factoring technique, which is related to the one we just discussed. Here, we want to factor using the difference of cubes. Notice here the only difference is that you have a minus sign in between. So the formula will be very, very similar to the previous one, but this is equal to a minus b. So here, if we look at this little mnemonic device here, we'll keep the same sign. So here we're keeping the same sign. And then this is going to be multiplied by a squared once again. We'll take our opposite sign. So here we kept the same sign. We're now going to take the opposite sign. So we have positive a times b. And then that last term will always be positive. So plus b squared. So just make sure you know the difference between using this formula in this formula, and really the only difference is that one is an addition, the other one is a minus. So here we'll apply the same technique we used using the sum of cubes. So here we're going to focus on just one more example, which is on the bottom left. 8x cubed minus 1. Once again, they want you to factor this. We have two terms, a minus sign in between, and x cubic. So here this would be equal to something cubed minus something cubed. And once again, just like in the previous examples, we're going to take the cube root of each piece. So we're going to take the cube root of 8. If you type that in, that'll give us 2. I'm going to type 2 here. The cube root of x cubed will just leave us with x. So I'm going to put x on the inside. So here our a value is going to be 2x. And then once again, here, we're going to take the cube root of 1. If you type that in, that'll just give us a 1. So I'm going to type in 1 here. All right, so here this was our a value, and this would be our b value. Okay. And so using that formula above, we're going to say this is equivalent to, now we're going to go and subtract a and b. So we're going to get 2x minus 1 multiplied by, we want to square our a value. Our a value is 2x. Be real careful here once again. I'm going to put that in parentheses, 2x, and I'm going to square the whole thing, plus a times b. Here, once again, be real careful. A times b here would just be 2x. So we have positive 2x. And then we want to take our b value and square it. Our b value is 1. 1 squared is just 1. So we'll end up with positive 1 here. All right. And last step here, we have to be able to simplify this piece right there. So your final answer would be parentheses 2x minus 1 times, once again, we distribute the exponents. You get 2 squared, which is 4. We get x squared. Everything else stays exactly the same. All right, so this is how we factor 8x cubed minus 1 using the difference of cubes formula. This would be your final answer. We can also extend this further, which is what we'll look at in the future. But most important thing here, and the final thing on to end off with is this right here, is called the linear factor. And if you notice, the second term we have here involves a quadratic. So we'll call that the quadratic factor. Okay. So at some point, I'm going to ask for you to solve these types of equations. So one way of solving it is using the factoring method we just used, and then setting each piece equal to 0, thinking about how to solve each piece, and we'll talk about that in the future. Okay, but that is the factoring using the difference of cubes.